I am 99 years old now, and my hands tremble even when I'm not cold. But tonight, they shake for a different reason. I've carried this burden for so long that my bones feel shaped by it, as if every year carved deeper grooves into me. I'm closer to the end than the beginning, and I suppose that's why the truth presses so hard against my chest now, begging to be spoken before my breath gives out. For most of my life, I told myself I would take this secret to the grave. But a promise, even a sacred one, changes weight when the body holding it begins to fail. And mine is failing. I can feel it in the way my heart stutters, in the way my memories flicker like lanterns in a long hallway. Yet there is one memory that is never dimmed, one that burns clearer than the rest, even after 72 years. The summer of 1987, the year a native elder led me into the forest, and the year I realized the world was larger, more ancient, and more sorrowful than any of us dared imagine. Back then I was only 28, too young to understand the cost of being chosen by something that wasn't human. I lived in the outskirts of the Pacific Northwest, where trees rose like cathedral pillars and fog crawled down the mountains like it had a soul. I was running from a collapsing marriage and a life that felt borrowed rather than lived. The forest became a place to hide from myself. My boots carried me along narrow deer trails, through cedar groves and abandoned logging paths, while my mind drifted anywhere but home. There were days I walked so far that the world behind me felt imaginary, and only the hush of wind through needles felt real. I didn't know I was being watched during those wanderings, not until the day old man Taka stepped into the trail and spoke my name like he'd known me since birth. He was small, bent, wrapped in layers of wool and fur despite the heat. Feathers hung from his braid, each one darkened by decades of weather. His eyes were pale, not from age but from something deeper, like river stones polished by time. I had seen him before in town, moving quietly, avoiding crowds, always alone. I never expected him to speak to me. Yet there he was, blocking the trail with that carved wooden staff, and staring as if he could read the ache behind my ribs. Before I could ask how he knew my name, he told me I was being summoned. Not by him, but by the forest. He said the land remembered the kind who listened, and I had been listening without realizing it. At first I thought he was talking in riddles the way elders often did, but there was something unsettling in the certainty of his tone. I felt the world sharpen around us, the air thickening as if holding its breath. He turned and began walking without explaining further. Part of me wanted to turn back, to return to the familiar misery of my cabin, to avoid whatever strange path he was dragging me toward. But something in his voice, something worn and solemn, held me. I followed. We walked for hours, though it felt like we were moving deeper into an older century rather than deeper into the woods. Light dimmed under the canopy, and the temperature dropped enough that goose flesh crawled up my arms. Taka never looked back. His pace was slow but sure, feet landing softly, barely disturbing leaves. Even the birds grew quiet, leaving only the sound of my breath and the occasional crack of branches under my boots. Sometimes he'd tap his staff against a tree, muttering words in a language I didn't understand. I wondered if he was warning something or asking permission to pass. Eventually we reached a cliff face veiled with vines and shadow, a place I must have walked past dozens of times without ever seeing it. Taka stopped at its base, his shoulders rising and falling in a steady rhythm. He whispered something into the rock, and the air shifted, carrying a musk scent, heavy, earthy, strangely warm. He turned to me and told me to leave behind anything made of metal. I hesitated, but his expression held no room for argument. I emptied my pockets, removed my belt knife, and laid everything on a flat stone. Then he parted the hanging vines and stepped into darkness. The smell hit me first, damp stone mixed with something animal, something alive. Heat pulsed from deeper within the cave, rolling over my skin like the breath of a sleeping beast. My heartbeat quickened, every instinct urging me to turn back. But Taka beckoned with a soft flick of his fingers. I followed him into the cavern's mouth, feeling the ceiling lower, the air thicken. Shadows move along the walls, stretching and shrinking as if alive. And then I heard it, a low rumble echoing from somewhere ahead. Not the rumble of shifting earth or dripping water. This one vibrated through my ribs, slow and deliberate. I froze, but Taka touched my arm, steadying me. He whispered, "Do not fear him. He has feared your kind for far too long." "Him?" I whispered back, though my throat was dry. Before the elder could answer, something shifted in the darkness. A shape, massive, hunched, impossibly broad, moved with slow, controlled weight. I smelled wet fur and soil. The rumble deepened, followed by a soft chuff that felt more curious than threatening. Taka lifted his staff and murmured something that seemed to calm whatever lurked ahead. The shape drew closer, and for a moment its eyes caught the faint light. A dull amber glow, ancient and sorrowful. The sight rooted me where I stood. It wasn't the look of a predator. It was a look of something tired, something watching humanity from a distance it did not choose. I wanted to run. Instead, I inhaled, tasting damp minerals on my tongue, and forced myself to meet its gaze. My fear didn't fade, but it changed flavor. Less terror, more awe. Like standing before a storm that could destroy you yet chooses not to. The creature stepped closer still, and I realized its head nearly brushed the cave ceiling. A massive hand shifted against the ground, fingers long, knuckles scarred. Not a bear, not any animal I knew. Something older, something the old stories warned about and worshipped in equal measure. Taka leaned toward me and whispered a single sentence that froze the blood in my veins. "He has waited for someone to listen," he said. "And today he chose you." I returned to the cave the next morning with a tightness in my chest, the sort that forms when fear and longing pull in opposite directions. Dawn had barely surfaced, yet the forest felt older than light, soaked in dew and the faint sweetness of crushed ferns beneath my boots. Every sound mattered. A distant snap, a flutter of wings, the whisper of wind threading high branches. I felt watched again, but there was a difference. Yesterday the sensation chilled me. Today it felt like an invitation, as though the forest waited for my choice. Taka sat at the entrance when I arrived, his eyes closed, his staff resting across his knees. He opened them slowly, studying me with a solemn patience that made my breath itch. Without rising, he asked if I had slept. I told him the truth. I hadn't. Something in the creature's eyes had followed me through the night. Taka nodded as though expecting that. He said the creature had stayed awake too, humming softly, listening for the echo of my footsteps. The knowledge unsettled me, not with fear, but with a strange sense of responsibility I wasn't prepared to carry. Inside, the air vibrated with a low hum that pulsed through the stone. The creature sat near the back, half hidden in shadow, its eyes reflecting faint amber. When I stepped closer, it extended one massive hand, palm open. I couldn't touch it yet. Even reaching toward it felt like breaching a sacred boundary. Still, the creature exhaled softly, a warm breath that washed over my skin. Taka murmured a phrase in the old tongue, and the hum deepened, steady and unthreatening. I lifted my hand until it hovered above its palm, feeling heat radiate upward. The moment felt fragile, as though the slightest wrong movement would send everything shattering. Then the creature tapped its chest twice, a soft clicking sound following the gesture. Taka explained it was a sign of trust, rarely given. My throat tightened. I imitated the motion, tapping my sternum. The creature answered with a low hum that felt almost approving. Something shifted then, not understanding, but a thread of recognition. I sensed its wariness, its exhaustion, its relentless endurance against a world that pushed it on all sides. Days passed, and I returned with offerings, water, berries, dried meat. Each time the creature examined them with deliberate curiosity, sniffing, touching, testing. It communicated through gestures I slowly deciphered. Lowered head for caution, slow blink for calm, a resonant rumble when danger lurked nearby. Taka guided me, teaching me to listen with my whole body. He hears the world differently, the elder told me. If you listen long enough, you will hear it too. One afternoon, the creature motioned me outside. Sunlight spilled to the canopy in broken beams. It crouched beside disturbed soil where a deep, crude imprint lay. I thought it was an animal track until I saw the straight edges. Metal, the creature touched the wound in the earth, then pressed its hand to a nearby tree. The sorrow in its eyes stunned me. Taka spoke quietly. Machines had come closer, scarring land once walked by the creature's kin. As weeks slipped into one another, our bond strengthened. The creature watched me with a patience I had never experienced from another living being. It studied the tremor in my hands when I was anxious and the steadiness when I wasn't. More than once, it tapped the ground near my boot to steer me from hidden pits or unstable stones. Its awareness of my fragility felt almost tender. Sometimes its gentleness startled me more than its size. Yet the forest grew tense. Logging camps whispered of something enormous moving through the trees. Government agents arrived, hard-eyed men who dismissed local warnings. Their trucks snarled along dirt roads, searchlights slicing through branches. Each time engines echoed through the valley, the creature stiffened, pressing its palm to the ground to feel vibrations the way others might taste the air. Its hums grew sharper. Even without translation, I understood the fear beneath them. One evening, as the creature approached the entrance, it faltered. I crouched beside it and saw a deep gash near its ankle, swollen and glistening with dark fluid. A metal trap had torn into it. The creature tried to mask the pain, but its breath shook. Taka cleaned the wound, packing moss and herbs, whispering blessings. The creature endured silently, gripping the earth so tightly its knuckles blanched beneath thick fur. Watching it suffer hit me with a force I didn't expect. Anger at the cruelty, guilt for my species, a fierce urge to protect. Taka looked at me, and the weight of what we shared settled fully on my shoulders. As colder nights came, activity in the valley increased. Helicopters pounded overhead, their blades shuddering the air. The creature listened constantly, ear to the ground, tapping warning patterns on the cave floor. I sensed time narrowing around us, tension closing like a trap. Then, late one night, the creature shook me awake with sharp hum, its eyes fixed on the cave mouth. The forest outside was unnervingly silent. I stepped out into the cold air. Through the trees, faint but unmistakable, I saw the glow of floodlights cutting across the valley floor. They were close, far too close. And for the first time, I felt the creature's fear as clearly as my own. The creature stepped beside me, its breath warm against my shoulder, its body tense as a bowstring. It lifted its chin, inhaling the metallic scent drifting through the trees, and tapped a trembling finger against my chest, a warning, or perhaps a plea. I understood then that whatever bond we'd formed had become something deeper, tie my fate to his. The forest held its breath around us. I felt a choice gathering, one I had never expected to face. And as the lights moved closer, I realized there was no turning back from what waited in the shadows. In that moment I knew. Winter settled early over the valley that year, pressing cold into the ground until even the stones felt burdened. I visited the cave each day, carrying whatever supplies I could manage, though the world seemed to tighten around us with every passing hour. The creature's wound worsened despite Taka's careful tending, and I began to hear a heaviness in its breath, a quiet surrender it tried to hide. Each time it shifted, a low groan trembled through its body, muffled as if it feared worrying me. I would sit beside it, my back against the stone wall, listening to distant engines prowl in the valley, feeling its warmth fade inch by inch. In those moments, I realized the bond between us had grown beyond curiosity. I was no longer an observer. I was a guardian, though I barely understood the weight of that role. One night, while a storm rolled across the mountains, the creature motioned for me to sit close. Its eyes glowed in the dark. Tired yet determined, and with slow, deliberate movements it began to trace shapes into the dirt, circles within circles, branching lines like rivers, jagged fire symbols. These were not myths. They were memories. Through gestures and deep vibrations, it showed forests burning under choking skies, rivers darkened by poison, animals fleeing scarred landscapes. Its hum grew mournful, vibrating through the stone and my bones alike. I felt grief swell inside me, grief not entirely its own. Taka entered quietly, studying the symbols with reverence. He knelt beside me, whispering that the creature had witnessed changes long before our machines carved their first wounds. "He fears what your people refuse to see," he said. "He fears what comes when the balance breaks." His voice carried no anger, only sorrow, shaped by years of watching the land struggle to breathe. The creature continued drawing until its strength faltered. I caught its arm before it collapsed fully, and the weight of it nearly pushed me into the dirt. Up close, its fever radiated like a furnace barely contained. Its breath came in shuddering waves, and its massive hand wrapped weakly around my forearm. I whispered reassurances. I wasn't sure it understood, but its eyes softened. In that look, I felt a bond stronger than explanation. Outside, the storm hammered the earth, but inside, every sound centered on the creature's labored breaths, each one a fragile thread tying it to this world. By morning, the storm had passed, but danger had not. Helicopters swept the valley, their blades cutting the air with merciless rhythm. Trucks followed, crawling along narrow paths like hunters searching for wounded prey. The creature sensed them long before I did. It pressed its ear to the ground, then lifted its head with a strained grunt. Fear flickered through its eyes, not for itself, but for us. That realization hit me like a blow. It was protecting us as much as we were protecting it. In the days that followed, its condition worsened. Fever hollowed its strength, and every movement drained what little remained. Taka and I worked in shifts, applying herbs, offering water warmed by fire, whispering calm into the dim cave. Sometimes the creature drifted into a half-conscious state, humming sounds that echoed through the stone like distant thunder. Taka believed it called out to kin long gone or far away. I felt helpless, caught between worlds I had not been born to understand, yet could no longer step away from. Then came a morning when Taka did not arrive. I walked the familiar path until I found him resting against a fallen cedar, breath shallow, skin pale. He told me quietly that his heart was failing, that winter had taken more from him than he could spare. "My path ends soon," he said, placing a trembling hand over mine. "Yours continues." You must be his voice when mine goes silent. The weight of his words crushed something inside me. I had never wanted burden so heavy, yet refusing it would have dishonored everything he and the creature had entrusted to me. I helped him back, step by slow step, feeling the future narrow into a single, unavoidable direction. That night, while he slept at the entrance, I sat beside the creature, brushing damp hair from his brow. Lantern light cast wavering shadows across its face, each flicker revealing the toll the last weeks had carved into it. It opened its eyes with effort, focusing on me as if pulling my image through fog. It tapped the ground twice, the gesture of gratitude. I swallowed hard, unable to speak past the ache in my throat. Its gaze drifted toward Taka's sleeping form, and a soft, mournful hum rose from its chest, vibrating the cave floor with grief too ancient for words. Later, as the moon rose, a low rumble rolled through the valley. Engines again, closer than ever. The creature stirred weakly, trying to rise. Pain drove it back down. I reached for my pack, ready to lead the agents away, but Taka stopped me with a fragile hand. "You cannot outrun them forever," he whispered. His voice trembled, not with fear, but truth. "But he has one more truth to show you." I returned to the creature's side as the engines grew louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. The creature raised an arm with immense effort and pointed toward the deeper tunnels of the cave, eyes burning with urgency. Whatever truth it needed to reveal was hidden in that darkness. The gesture lingered in my mind, unsettling and magnetic at once. I had never ventured into the deeper caverns, respecting boundaries I barely understood, but the creature's insistence left no room for hesitation. Its finger trembled as it pointed, each movement heavy with meaning. I followed its gaze into the yawning dark, where cold air drifted outward like a breath from another age. I felt Taka watching me, his weakened presence reminding me that whatever awaited was meant for me alone. The creature's hum deepened, urging, pleading, its eyes reflecting a truth it could not speak. I stepped closer to the shadowed passage, feeling an ancient chill brush my skin, and sensed that the path ahead would unravel secrets older than the forest itself. In that moment, as engines roared nearer, I knew the revelation waiting in that darkness would change everything. I took a breath, feeling the cave tighten around us, as if bracing for what came next then. The deeper passage swallowed what little light the lantern offered, turning each step into a negotiation with the dark. The air felt colder, carrying a mineral scent like ancient rain trapped in stone. Behind me, The creature's labored breaths echoed faintly, each one urging me forward despite the fear tightening my chest. I moved with a hand against the wall, fingers brushing grooves carved not by tools, but by time. The tunnel widened suddenly, revealing a chamber lit by a faint blue glow pulsing through crystal veins. The light throbbed softly, like something sleeping beneath the rock. I froze, knowing this was no ordinary cavern, but a place the creature had guarded longer than I'd been alive. The creature followed slowly, leaning against a stone. Its eyes shimmered in the glow, giving its face a fragile calm. With trembling fingers, it pointed toward a cluster of markings etched into the wall. Symbols like those it had drawn in the dirt, but older, carved with precision. I approached, tracing them lightly. Images emerged, beings like the creature standing beside early humans, sharing fire, shelter, warnings. Then jagged shapes, storms, floods, ruined forests. The final mark was a deep gash cutting downward like a wound. When I touched it, cold spread up my arm like a whisper of dread. The creature released a low, mournful hum and pressed its forehead to the wall. I understood then. This chamber held its memory, its warning, perhaps its purpose. I turned toward it, ready to ask what I should do, but it sank to one knee, breath hitching. I rushed to support it, feeling heat radiate from its fevered body. Before I could speak, echoes drifted through the cavern. The clatter of boots on stone. The agents had entered the cave. Voices rose sharply. Their flashlights flickered against the far wall. The creature tensed, tried to rise, but pain forced it down. It tapped my chest once, a gesture of trust, and pointed again at the markings. It wanted me to remember, if it could not walk out alive. The lights drew closer. I tried to drag the creature deeper into the chamber, but it resisted, lowering itself with intention. It knew it could not outrun them. It chose to remain here, in the heart of its truth. I extinguished the lantern and pressed myself into the shadows. The agents entered with weapons raised. One gasped when his beam found the creature bathed in blue light. They barked orders, though it barely had strength to lift its head. I stepped into their view before they could fire, shouting for them to stop. Their guns turned toward me. I lied quickly, claiming the creature had saved me, begging them not to harm it. For a heartbeat, they hesitated. But the creature lifted its gaze, not in threat, but in sorrow. The nearest agent misread the gesture. His finger tightened on the trigger. I lunged between them as the shot cracked through the chamber. The bullet ricocheted, scattering sparks. The creature roared, not in rage but in fear, and with a last of its strength slammed its fist into the floor. The ground shook violently. Rocks tumbled from above. Cracks raced across the walls. Chaos erupted. Agents scrambled for the exit as stones rained down. I crawled to the creature, shielding its head. Dust filled the air. The blue veins dimmed. The creature tried to rise but collapsed, breath faltering. I pressed my forehead against it, whispering that I was here. Its arm lifted weakly, brushing my shoulder in a gesture so gentle it hollowed my chest. The ceiling groaned. A huge slab crashed down, sealing the tunnel. The agent's shouts faded behind stone. The chamber darkened as the crystals flickered out. I felt the creature's chest rise once more, then weaken. Its eyes met mine, ancient, grateful. With a final soft hum, it rested its head against me. I held it as its warmth ebbed away. When the dust settled, silence filled the chamber. I knew I couldn't stay, the air thinned with every breath. But I couldn't leave without honoring what it had entrusted to me. I touched the markings once more, memorizing their shapes. Then I placed my hand over the creature's still chest, promising I would carry its message. I paused at the threshold, unable to step forward yet. The silence felt sacred, as though the chamber mourned with me. My hand shook, not from fear but from the weight of understanding. The creature had not simply revealed a hidden world. It had given me its last breath, its final plea for the fate of living things. I knelt beside its still form, pressing my forehead to the cold stone. For a moment, I imagined the earth acknowledging the loss of one of its guardians. Dust drifted from above, urging me to move before the mountain sealed itself. I rose slowly. The passage ahead glowed faintly with daylight, filtering through a distant opening. That thin light felt like a hand at my back, urging me forward. As I stepped into the passage, the air shifted. Cooler, fresher, tinged with pine and distant snow. Each step took me farther from the creature's resting place. Yet the connection did not weaken. I felt it in my pulse, in the memory of its final hum. The tunnel twisted once and widened, revealing a fracture in the mountainside where daylight poured in. I moved toward it, blinking at the brightness. Before climbing out, I looked back. The chamber was nearly swallowed by shadow now, its ancient glow fading. And in that dimness, a quiet promise formed inside me. The story was mine to carry. The truth would breathe through me. And as engines roared outside, I understood the world would shift the moment I stepped into the light. Before climbing out, I looked back. The chamber was nearly swallowed by shadow now, its ancient glow fading. And in that dimness, a quiet promise formed inside me. The story was mine to carry. The truth would breathe through me. And as engines roared outside, I understood the world would shift the moment I stepped into the light. Which city are you watching our video from? Please leave a comment. Please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you.